All right, folks, and we're back. And joining me live is Dana Loesch. And for most of you all out there, you know, I'm pretty sure everyone knows Dana, but everybody doesn't know Dana's story, or they should.
Yeah.
They should about her book, actually. Y'all slacking out there. I don't know what y'all are doing with your lives.
It's a great stocking stuffer. It's crazy.
Go ahead and hold up a copy for the camera. Do you have one in front of you right now? No. Yes.
No, but well, you know what? I have back behind me. I have my big old pop-ups.
Gotcha. There you go.
I know. As soon as I have a book, I end up giving it away to somebody if I see them. But no, I mean, and you're right. I mean, my situation with firearms, my involvement with them all my family's from the Ozarks, and so. I mean, they were an hour away from a movie theater. They're all in Iron and Wake counties in southern Missouri. So they're very far from everything. And when we had Thanksgiving, it was literally a turkey that my grandfather hunted. And they took care of it in the backyard. That's how they do. We have venison sausage and some Oberle cheese during Christmas.
We got our turkey from Kroger.
See, there you go. I mean, but there wasn't a Kroger down there. There was a Ralph's that was 45 minutes away. And if you wanted to get anything good around the holidays from Ralph's, you best get there early. Otherwise, you ain't getting it. You're not going to get a turkey. People are very self-sustaining. They don't like government intervention, and they just want to be able to do them, and you do you. And that's how they live their lives. But I wrote in my first book how it was an incident from one of my aunt's estranged husbands at the time. He was a prohibited possessor. He got violent. He ended up following her. She ran away through the woods to my grandparents' house. And I happened to be there in the middle of the night, and it was late summer. I was getting ready to go back to school. And I used to stay the summers with my grandparents because my mom worked 3 jobs in the city. And I remember hearing this crazy creature. I thought it was a creature wailing and sobbing. And I was scared because my grandparents' front door had a lock that didn't work. They didn't even lock their front door. Nobody did down there. It just was for decoration, basically. And I remember
the door to my bathroom.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I lock my car in my garage. It's just a far cry from everything. And I remember hearing the footsteps in the gravel in their driveway and thinking my grandparents, they don't have their front door locked. And it was my aunt, and they had to call the law. And in a very vast, expansive county like the ones that you have in southern Missouri, it can take 20 minutes for the law to arrive. So that's her husband actually pursued her and was going to inflict some damage. And I was actually, the first time as a kid, I was probably 9 or 10 years old. I was fearful for my life until my grandfather came in, and he got his shotgun and he sat on the front porch, and the estranged husband thought better of pursuing it further because he knew that my grandfather, who was a World War II veteran, was going to take him out if he tried it. So that was when I really first, because I grew up with, everybody hunting. My grandfather and my uncles and cousins taught me how to shoot, but that was my first introduction to it as self-defense. Okay. Well, then fast forward now to living in downtown St. Louis. We didn't live out in the county. I could see the arch from my backyard. And I really liked my neighborhood. I had a very quiet city block. My kids and all the neighbor kids would play out in the front yard. Well, we didn't really have yards. They'd ride their bikes up and down the street. We had this old brownstone. And it was a nice area, but we could see crime starting to increase. We knew that we had friends that were several blocks over who were fighting gang invasions, and drug dealers were trying to move in. And it seems like no matter what part of the city that you went to, every family was having this problem. And I remember when my cousin moved 3 doors down from us, he one evening coming back from his job, it was late. He was the manager of a restaurant, and he was pistol whipped and beaten up and mugged right in the middle of the street, 3 doors down from us, just hours after my children had been playing in the middle of the street and playing on the sidewalks with the neighbor kids. Yeah. And so my kids didn't go outside after that anymore unless I was standing in front of my house with my Glock on my hip. And Missouri was open carry, so I open carried, and I let any car that I didn't know that walked out, that would drive fast down my street, anybody that we could tell because there was a drug den trying to open at the end of the street. Anybody that looked like they were driving through and up to no good, they saw me standing out. Whenever the kids were out, I would be out there lawfully carrying, my arms crossed, my Glock on my hip. And it was one of those things where the neighbors began to feel comfortable. And I mean, I lived in a very diverse community, and we're talking about demographics that people maybe wouldn't think would be friendly towards the Second Amendment. But when they realize, look, Now we have a sense of protection from, drug dealers that are trying to move into our neighborhood. These variables that we all fear. Here we are banding together, and my neighbors started to ask me about firearms, and they started to ask me about getting permits, and they started asking me, well, what range can I go to and learn how to shoot? And that was a lot of common ground that we had. And that's they felt better with their kids outside when they knew, oh, well, Dana's out there. Look at her. She's out there standing. Everything's okay. We can go and do what we need to do.
The de facto police officer of the
Yeah. I mean, and it's sad. You know what, Colion? It is sad that in order for my kids to feel safe, for me and the other parents on my block to feel okay, and for their kids to feel okay, somebody had to stand out there and do that. But because it was necessary, I'm glad that I was able to do that, and that I had the right to do it.
Yeah, and I was just saying it at the opening of the show. I don't like the reasons why I carry. I just understand why I have to do them. And I protect the right to do it as much as possible because I understand it's necessary. The same way you felt it necessary to stand out there and make sure that your kids had a safe playing environment.
Right.
And I think a lot of people miss that. I think it's so easy to just kind of say, if we could just make them disappear and be out of sight, everything will be okay. They approach it but they don't approach that the same way they would termites in their house, right? Out of sight, out of mind. No, it doesn't really work like that.
Yeah, I know. In St. Louis, we had a really high crime rate. And when I started getting into radio and talking about, being a gun owner and all of that, I got some threats. And that was the other reason. I mean, whenever I drove home and drove into the alley to park, I felt safe walking up to my house. And, like you said, I don't like the fact that I had to be fearful, but I sure am damn glad that I had my right to exercise my Second Amendment privilege. Yeah,
because most people don't. Most people in other countries don't. And it freaking bothers me because people are so willing to just throw it away in pursuit of being like other countries where people are less safe.
Right. Well, and something else real quick too, Colion. People need to realize common ground is to be found. And that's, I particularly in the cities where I live, because, we had a great relationship with our police, and they would come and they would notify us, like, we got some suspicious activity happening down the street. Yeah. Maybe you all should get into perhaps looking for your permits. That was right there. If people would realize that, we have these variables that nobody likes and nobody wants to deal with in their neighborhood, in every neighborhood, no matter where your neighborhood is, there is some common ground that we all have right there.
Yep. But then we also have groups of people who are trying to divide us as much as possible, who are trying to...
Exactly. Amen. Amen to that.
Yeah,
I know.
So it's unfortunate, but hey, we'll keep fighting it. I know you will.
Exactly.
As tenacious as you always are. But no, it was, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was always a pleasure. It's open door policy here with you. Whenever you want to come back, we're here.
Always. Thank you, Colion. I appreciate your voice.
You too. And we'll be back shortly with Bob Owens from Bearing Arms.